Welcome to another episode of VGN Weekly. Members of the Virtual Grip crew will recap the previous week's races and bring us one-on-one interviews with racers, league owners, and commentators, as well as others from within the sim racing community. Please like and subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell so you don't miss any of our broadcasts. If you are a league owner or potential sponsor and have a broadcasting need, please visit virtualgrip.net for info on how to get in touch with us. Thanks for tuning in today. Now let's go find some grip.
As the Virtual Grip Network gears up for another action-packed week of racing, let's take a quick look back at last week's race winners. On Thursday, Eric Stout dominated the night, claiming his 8th win of the season in Red Light Racing's SK Modified Series from Stafford Motor Speedway. And on Monday, Justin Michael had it all his own way throughout the night at Las Vegas Motor Speedway with Maximum Velocity's ARCA Series. Now we'll take a quick break before turning things over to John Hine, who's standing by with this week's special guest, Chris Davis.
Welcome back to VGN Weekly. I am your host, John Hine, and I am joined this week by Chris Davis of the Bootleg Racing League. Chris came to the Bootleg Racing League back in 2020, and he started in the dirt street stocks at the Knoxville Speedway. Since then, he's gone on to have 640 starts in the BRL with 61 wins, 355 top fives, 2 championships. Chris, what a prolific career so far. Does it seem like 640 starts? That's when I saw that number, it kind of popped out of my head.
Yeah, same here, John. I didn't realize I've been in that many BRL events. It's gone by fast, though. You know, I mean, on the one hand, I could definitely understand 640 because it's something that I would look forward to every weekend and still continue to do so after a brief hiatus. So, yeah, 640. I look forward to getting it to 1,200.
Yeah, that's pretty, like I said, it popped out of my head when I saw those numbers. But, you know, the important thing is, and it's a very timely thing, you know, you came to us, you know, when BRL was running dirt. So, you know, it's kind of cool because BRL is going to run dirt again, and we'll get into that here in just a bit. But, you know, the dirt went away, but you decided to stay with the BRL and run the asphalt side. So let's start there and talk about your transition from the dirt to the asphalt. What was that transition like, and did you run a lot of asphalt before you did that?
Well, I had briefly dabbled with iRacing back in, I want to say it was 2016 or 2017. I could probably find my old profile. And it was before Dirt even existed. So maybe it's even before 2017. Nevertheless, so I had some experience with sim racing on asphalt. I had NASCAR 2003. I had Grand Prix Legends, which is kind of the basis for where iRacing is. I'm pretty sure that's the engine that is used behind it. Um, and so I had some experience in sim racing with asphalt. And then had stepped away from iRacing for a while until the big event happened in 2020, and lockdown gave me a reason to build a new computer, and with a lot of time on my hands and no place to go, iRacing fit the bill.
Well, when you came to BRL and dirt, that was a lot of fun. And dirt's a whole different beast than the asphalt. But specifically, then your transition though from when dirt went away and the asphalt, what was the hardest thing that you had to adjust? Running the asphalt side of stuff.
I would say tire wear is a big one, because back then the tire model that iRacing had for us on dirt, you really just didn't wear out the tire, the way that we do on asphalt. And the biggest thing that I learned, which I then started to apply on the dirt side, was brake modulation. I messed around with the brakes a lot on asphalt, and that was a big learning curve. Still some things that I've learned about sim racing being different from real racing. There's things that work in the sim world that you probably wouldn't do in real life. And that's all I'll say about that for now, because people listening might be competing with me.
Yeah, well, and the other way around, there's things that you can do in real life that you can't do in iRacing just because of hit boxes and it's predictive codes and stuff like that. So,
Right.
um, yeah, from real life to BR, to iRacing, that's a question I get asked probably the most is how close is iRacing? And if I was to ask you that question, what is your answer to that?
Yeah, I am so impressed with what iRacing does. I think it reflects on John Henry's love for motorsports, because I don't think that iRacing, while I'm sure it's probably is profitable, that is not their motive. They are there to provide an outlet for other people who wish they could be racing in real life. And their level of detail is absolutely insane. With all the laser scanning, for instance, part of what attracted me to asphalt, John, is where I live up here in New England. That's pretty much all that we have. It's
Yep.
modified. I'd say it's the modified capital of the world.
Yes.
Some people in the South might disagree. But I was practicing on Stafford a little bit this morning, and that is what Stafford looks like. And I
Yeah.
know because I go there several times throughout the year. Um, and down to the little bumps, the shadows. I mean, everything is there. The buildings. It's pretty incredible. So that's a lot of what I enjoy about iRacing is the immersion. It takes me to where I would be if I could do it and stay married. Because there's no tire bill, and if I wreck, did I cut out for a sec?
Yeah, you did cut out for a second. You said when you wreck,
Yeah, when you wreck in iRacing, the
it
worst thing
doesn't
that's gonna
hurt.
well, I think you race in VR too, so
Yeah.
there are times where I close my eyes. If only if it's so bad that it's going to be like it doesn't really happen in BRL, but in some other racing that I've done, if you like start to spin the car, or like a flip in a midget in VR, can just make you sick.
Yeah, I've had several where, head down, basically the arms in, head down, that tuck position. I've done that a couple times, and it's funny you say that in the VR and the submersion because I've told this story before, I know, but I got a fan that's just like right off here on camera, and I remember one time at a BRL race, I was just really hot because the VR makes you hot. I actually went to reach my hand out the window to try to bring air into the car. So yeah, that. I mean, that's the only difference is you can't feel the G forces in your butt, but people would be surprised on how much your foot and your hand work. While
Oh,
it may
absolutely.
not be 100% the same, but it's pretty close. I mean, in some cars, it's dead on. The
Yeah.
midget's one of them. Um,
Yeah, I
but
agree.
yeah, it's a different transition, and you talked about the tire wear on the asphalt side of things, but um, what did you think of the longer races? Because when you run dirt, we're talking 20, 30, maybe 50 lap features where you got to go when the green flag drops, as opposed to the asphalt side where you got some time there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really liking the 100 lap length. In another league that I do some racing, it's 200 laps. And the longer races are enjoyable because of the strategy that you can put in place. And that, I think that is part of what has helped my racecraft is because you have 100 laps. And like you just said, John, you don't have to immediately go at the drop of the flag. In general, it depends on who's ahead of you
Yep.
and who's behind you. But yeah, you can be more patient. And yet sometimes that can come to bite you. There's times where I've been patient and we go flag to flag with no caution.
Yeah.
And yet that adds a cool element, you know. So I really enjoy I think the 100 lap length without getting to change tires is a sweet spot in what I enjoy.
Yeah, Lowell does a really, really nice job with that, especially with that late model. That tire wear is like perfect for that length of race. So, um, you know, i- you talk about the 80 or even the 50 lap feature, but the one thing that dirt does have is that the heat races. There's 8 laps, so you talk about having to go from the drop of the flag. Heat race, you can't mess around. So, as we transition back to dirt now. Tell me a little bit about like your mindset, like lining up for a heat race as opposed to a feature. Are your views different between the two of them?
You know, that is something that I've started to think about now that I know that we're gonna have the opportunity to do dirt again. Is I definitely, if you remember the dirt street stocks, we had inverted heat races,
Yep.
um, versus your qualifying time, and so that's probably part of where I started to earn the nickname Mr. Aggressive is because I might be starting sixth or eighth, and I'm trying to get to the front as fast as I can.
Yep.
Um, and there's not always nice ways to do that.
No, no, and yeah, yeah, no, I mean guilty. You can't mess around, and you've got to get up. Especially, if I remember correctly back then, BRL was taking what was it like the top two to the feature, so you
Yep,
had to be on when that flag, and if you did start sixth or fourth or whatever, you couldn't mess around. And I think that's also where some of the friction behind the scenes came from too, and that is that creation of that got to go. And you like you said, there's sometimes you can't always do it in the nice way because you can't work a guy, you can't afford to work a guy over for 4 or 5 laps, because if you do that, the heat race is over.
exactly.
um Go ahead.
But in answering your question, I would say so that's believe it or not, we're going on 5 years ago that you and I first started to bang door handles. And
Yeah.
and after taking a break from BRL for a bit and coming back and reevaluating, why I do iRacing, what I enjoy about the BRL league specifically, and why a lot of other people are probably doing iRacing is to escape, some of the day-to-day issues that we all face. And so I recognize that it's not the same as when I may have been racing in real life, and that a lot of people are just looking for some enjoyment. Obviously with
Yeah.
competitiveness,
Well,
and so. I that's part of where I would say I've been more relaxed because you know what?
Yeah. Well,
Let's have
that's why you and I think, we had our scrapes, and I think for both of us, I think it's fair to
one or
say
two,
this is for you to scratch your competitive itch. Well, I hate losing more than I like winning. So,
right?
and that's probably to a fault, for me. And I do try to work on a little bit. And you're right. Not everybody in here is for that ultimate competitive, itch to, there. So, but, for those that are looking in, wanting, thinking about doing the dirt here, since it's a new thing, and there's a lot of members in BRL that weren't around when we did dirt. Um, Tell them what, in your opinion, why do you think they should come in and give it a go and see what they think?
Yeah, I would say number one to learn something new. I think one of the best things that we can do in life is always be learning. Uh, and there's a lot of fun that you can have in dirt because it is and can be so dramatically different from asphalt. Number one, you're dealing with moisture on the track. And so, unlike asphalt, where you're pretty much going to be hitting the same spot for 100 laps, give or take, right? I mean, you probably, if you're working on tire and whatnot, adjust your line throughout the race, but it's still pretty much the same line, right, John?
Yeah, it's not that different. I mean, your lift points become a little different.
And maybe a little bit of entry and the way that you might come off a turn or whatnot, but it's still
Yep.
what you're not seeing on asphalt, unless you're Kyle Larson, is throwing it up against the wall without.
Oh, you cut out again.
Ah, that's so funny. Thank you. It's one of those things where the line evolves
Yeah.
and you can have two or three different lines, and it's not like asphalt where when we say the outside's working,
Yeah.
yeah, that's just like side by side. But on dirt, the difference between being on the bottom and being on the top can be three car widths apart.
Yeah. And the thing is too, it can move around. The bottom on dirt can, work early, then go away, then come back at the end,
Yep.
um and that kind of stuff. So, it's not, it is a different, what you do with your feet, your hands, completely different. And these late models, um the street stocks are what BRL did earlier, and the late models, there is a little more difficulty in getting those cars around because you've got a little more power that'll create tire spin.
Yep.
Um, so, but tell me the difference, and even for those that ran the dirt street stocks, what are the big differences between that and the late model? So if they come out, what can they expect out of driving a dirt late model?
Yeah. Very different. So a street stock on a 10% track, anybody just about can be relatively quick when the track is tacky. And it's what I enjoyed about BRL is that we'd wear the track out, and it was always fun to watch people who had only ever run in officials where they never drove on a slick track and how they would struggle once the track slicked off. And so what that relates to with the late models, John, is throttle control. Something that you don't have to worry about as much on asphalt. When we ran the super late models, you could spin the rear tire a bit, especially near the end.
Yeah.
But on dirt, with the late model, a lot of times you have way more horsepower than you need, and so learning to maybe never actually get to 100% full throttle, I think is something that a lot of people will hopefully enjoy learning.
Yeah, you have to learn to drive with that proverbial egg under your foot. Driving a dirt late model. And the funny thing is, and I'll dispense with a little advice here. When I drive, the funny thing is about the right foot, I'm never at zero and I'm rarely at 100. But for the most part, my right foot is usually between 70% throttle and 90%. When it gets slicker, it might drop down to the 50 or 60 and up to the 80. But, on a wet track, Yeah, I mean it's heat from heat race on anyway. Usually that 70 to 90% is where I'm at. So if you're in the corner and you're all the way on the throttle, you're lifting all the way out.
Nope.
That's yep. You don't want to do that. My biggest advice that I can always give to somebody, and I don't know if you do this or not, but when I get into the corner and right when the car starts to rotate, you stop with that throttle and hold it right there and it'll catch the car and you just hold your foot all the way around the corner, get your car pointed and then roll back into it is the single biggest advice I can have with those cars. Um, so I don't mind giving away secrets, provides better racing, but what are you so I take it you're going to plan on running the late models for the season, at least most of the races you can get to, correct?
Yeah, the ones that I can. I kind of will pick and choose the Friday night racing probably, because at the moment I'm having so much fun in asphalt that the asphalt side will be, I would say, my primary focus on Saturday nights, and when I can join on Friday, I certainly will. Um, and I'm not real good in the late models. There's other dirt cars that I tend to be much better at. But yeah, I like the tips that you're already sharing. And what I would say to people about dirt is part of what makes the BRL great is the level of respect and camaraderie that happens.
Yep.
And, I have not been really doing any dirt at all for quite a while now because if you're not in a clean league, dirt open
Yeah,
sessions it has never been worse. It has never been worse.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so it's just not even fun, to do an open session.
Yeah, everybody thinks I'm a dirt guy, and I've got like one start in the last 2 years an official race. I think I'll get in practice sessions and mess around a little bit,
Yeah.
but yeah, the open, and that does deter a lot of folks from maybe even trying dirt. But you're right about BRL and the guys that run BRL make the league. So, I mean, I've talked to Lowell about this many times that he could put pretty much any car on the track, and because of the drivers in the league it's gonna be successful. Any kind of oval racing he wants to do, he can do anything. And that's a cool thing about this league, and in the camaraderie too. You come from the real world, and I feel a lot of that in the league because when we would get done racing, you know, if we didn't have somewhere to go, we would hang out and there's a lot of camaraderie in the pits, during the night, even after the night, sometimes sitting around drinking a beer, talking about what happened. Even leaving the track and getting down the road and pulling into a rest or not a rest stop, but a truck stop, getting a bite to eat as we go down the road. There was times that, 5 or 6 teams would just pull tables together and we would sit, and do that. And you get that same vibe in the BRL, which is a really, really cool deal. Um, you
Yeah, I
know,
would agree.
and do we fight amongst ourselves every now and again? Sure we do, but that's what families do, I suppose. But you talk about yourself doing a lot of asphalt racing, which I gotta say, Chris, I'm a little disappointed in that. I've always had you pegged as a dirt guy, so I'm not gonna lie. You disappointed me a little bit, but because I like you, I'll let you off the hook here a little bit. But um, what are your is the BRL the only asphalt stuff that you're doing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Life has been pretty crazy for a while now, and so really, I don't get much time during the week lately to do any practice. Basically, I've been showing up on Saturday, and my practice is whatever 20 minutes or so. I get in before the race starts. So that's where I've been at lately. So it has only been BRL. And then once in a while for a test or something, I might do an official or just a test session to try and make things work. I'd also been having some PC. PC is in my computer.
Gotcha.
And I think I finally had it squared away. I won't bore you with the details, but computers are funny stuff. I build my own
Yes.
machines.
Yeah, all it does is take one update from one of your peripherals or something and throws everything out of whack.
Yeah,
Um, but out of the if BRL is your focus, we run BRL runs 2 cars on Saturday night. Well, 3, I guess you can count the street stock early on, but 2 broadcasted that are right here on VGN. The late models and the SK mods. Do you have a favorite between the 2 of those cars?
absolutely. It's the modified. I partly because that's what we have right here in the backyard. I think modifieds in real life put on a better show than late models. I mean, I've seen some really good late model races at Stafford and other places, but the modifieds are just so awesome. I enjoy the SK. If I were to be honest with you, I'd prefer to run the Wayland modified.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and and the reason why is the SK has too much tire for the horsepower.
yeah. It's all momentum. It's No,
Yeah,
I
and
agree.
that
Actually, I like the extra. The driver has some say about what's happening out there.
and momentum, and that's where I think sometimes we end up with some wrecks in the SK. Is similar to the dirt street stocks. It's a momentum thing, and the cars are so close in terms of speed from your fastest to your slowest racer out there.
Yeah.
That getting a good clean pass coming off a turn can be so difficult.
Yeah, because I mean, generally speaking, when everybody's no more than maybe 2/10 off of each other, going to the outside doesn't work because that's a longer way around. And I suppose if you can, you lose that 2/10 just being offline just a little bit. So,
Yes.
um, you know, it's it's incredible to watch because it does provide some exciting racing, and you do have to work guys over. But I'm a fan of the mods myself. That's actually why I joined BRL way back when, was to run the mods. And the cars they're fun to drive, but yeah, the tour mods would be a lot of fun when you have that extra power. And you know, you can match
Tire
a little
wear.
bit more. Yeah, and you can match a little bit more skill. You bring a little more skill into it. But everybody has an opinion on that one. But you know, do you have a favorite track then to run in the mods?
Yeah, Stafford. Partly because it's right here in my backyard. It makes me feel like you know, like I don't know, like I could be somebody out there in real life. Which, by the way, what I can share with you is where I have done officials in the modifieds, both SK and the Tour modified, has been on the same week that they might be running at Thompson in real life or Stafford
Mm.
in real life. And I have raced against Tommy Baldwin Jr.,
Oh, nice.
Christopher Jr., and let me tell you, even in a fixed setup, it's night and day. Like it is
Yeah.
unbelievable what those guys do, even with a fixed setup. And you think you're fast until you go against those guys that do it in real life.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and and it goes back to that hand and foot thing.
Sure.
So much quicker and all that kind of stuff. And and iRacing is visual. So the processing that you have to have with what you're doing, those guys are off the charts on that stuff. So
It
yeah,
also speaks to the
that's why
realism.
Max, yeah,
Oh,
it
go ahead.
does, and that's why I think Max Verstappen, anytime he climbs into the iRace, and you see him always winning these endurance races, yeah, his coordination's, probably unmeasurable.
Right, exactly. But it speaks back to what you were asking for about how realistic is iRacing. There has to be a reason why Max Verstappen or a local short track racer is on iRacing in the weekdays leading up to a big event at that track. Because they're getting at least some
Oh
level
yeah,
of prep without having to be in a race car at the track in real life. So they can do it at 8 o'clock at night.
yeah, and I can tell you, there's a lot of drivers in the top 3 NASCAR tiers that are on iRacing through the week. You can't see them, but they're on there. practicing and whatnot. I mean, they get the sim. They've got a special sim, from GM Ford and all that they could go. That's a little bit more advanced than what iRacing is. But I know for a fact, I would say there's probably a couple, 2, 3 dozen out of those top 3 tiers that are in iRacing the week of the NASCAR races to get familiar. And that number will go higher when you go to a road course or somewhere.
Oh, sure.
So it's, yeah, going back to that, little ad for iRacing, I guess. Take the, take the G-forces away, and it's getting closer. It's not quite perfect, but it's getting closer.
Do you use base
Um,
shakers, John?
Pardon?
Do you have base shakers on your rig?
No, I don't. I've got pedals and whatnot that will vibrate where I can feel where the car's losing the traction. So I do know where the edge is and I can feel it. And then I've got a direct drive wheel that actually allows me to feel cracks in the pavement and
Right.
bumped on a dirt track and all that kind of stuff. So I do get a feel from what I do. So there are things out there that you can get close to getting the feel. But Chris, there's nothing like when you go in and the G-forces are wanting to pitch you outside the window when you go into the corners. A
Right.
lot of guys could get out there and they think they could do it, but I can guarantee you a lot of those folks, if they got out and then felt what that really is like to slide a car across the track, they'd think twice.
I, I can speak to that in real life. It was part of the reason why I stopped racing.
Yeah. So, well, you talked about BRL, and the one thing I do want to talk to you about your transition. You touched on a little bit earlier in the show about learning to be more patient and racecraft. And I've done quite a few of these shows, and I don't think I've ever really touched on racecraft. But I think you are such a great example of development. You've become a better driver. You've become one of the better drivers in the league. I always knew that you had talent, so I'm not belittling, how you came into the league or anything like that. But you have improved. What do you think is the biggest reason for that? Is it just being more patient behind the wheel, or do you think it's experience? What do you attribute that to?
Thanks for the kind words. That means a lot coming from you, because obviously you've always been fast. And yeah, I definitely came into BRL dirt with I don't know, like I day one I just expected to win, and I was competitive, fairly competitive right away, but also the challenge with online is there wasn't an opportunity to read the room, so to speak, when I first got into BRL.
Yep.
And so I didn't, fully understand or appreciate the culture at the time, and then learn more. So I would say some of the things that are different is that in racing, for example, the modifieds. If I was really putting on a helmet, I would probably use the chrome horn, the way that I did when I was first running asphalt in the BRL, which is, I'm here, I'm still here, now I'm really here, right? And I bumped you, and now you're starting to block coming off the turn. Oh, heck no! Now you're getting a bump going in. That's how I used to approach it, because that's who I was in real life. I'm two different people. With a helmet on.
Well, in your defense, that is etiquette. That is proper etiquette in real life. So
right.
So don't anybody listen and don't think badly of that. That is how you do it. So sorry, go ahead.
You come to Stafford, right? And that's what you see. And Stafford's got enough room. It's not like Bowman Gray Stadium where you're on driving around a football field. But you start to block somebody, and that's not okay. Well, we can probably on a different show talk about whether or not it's okay in the BRL, but
I wouldn't want it aired.
So I just view it differently, right? I go back to people are here to have fun and get away from the stresses. So I think about it in terms of, because it's different and not real life. If I start to bump someone because that's what you do in real life, am I improving their experience, or am I taking something away from what they joined that race for?
Yeah.
And that's how I started to look at it. And it's funny, there are probably some races that I could,
Cut out.
there's probably some races where if I had used that chrome horn, I could have finished higher lately or whatnot. But I didn't have any lack of enjoyment because I finished 8th instead of 6th, for instance.
Yeah.
But what didn't happen is I didn't ruin someone else's night, and that's what I've started to think about more. And then by being patient, sometimes you can let the race, especially because there are 100 laps, you can let the race come to you. And I've been working really hard to try and avoid incidents. I don't want to have my name on an IRT report. Now, sometimes there's just no way to avoid it because it is racing after all, right?
Yep. Well,
So that's how I'm approaching it differently.
Well, and but the thing is here, while you've changed that approach mentally, it's improved your performance on the track. I mean, you're winning asphalt races. You're a contender. When we first transitioned, I don't know that I saw that out of you. You always had pace, but you didn't have the finishes that showed your talent. And where did the light bulb go off where you realize, wow, I am now starting to get the finishes that match, the nights that you have, the talent that you have?
Well, again, thank you for the kind words. I think being on pause for a little while was good. Did some other racing for a bit, and then just trying to see, well, what would happen if, right? Like a trial and error kind of thing, which is, how would the end of my night feel, and what sort of finishes would I have with a greater level of patience? And you're right, it's been working well. And interestingly, I think with patience, I may have picked up a little bit more speed.
Yeah, absolutely, you have.
Because you're not driving the car so hard to try and get around someone so fast, and then now you do have tires at the end. So it's all worked out well.
It has.
I think I've shared this with Ryan before. I don't mind being called Mr. Aggressive. I earned it. But what I want to be known for is aggressive in a respectful way that doesn't require using the bump and run kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, as a fan of racing, and I like, whether I'm in the field or not in the field, I love to watch racing, and I do like to see. I mean, the BRL is littered with guys that I've watched progress over the years. I mean, you take a Kurt Smith, to where he was when he started to how he is now. I mean, multi-champion. Um, and forgive me because I know there's a handful of others that fit into his category. Todd Liston's another one. Um, it's cool to see the improvement. And like I said, you're one of those that has made that. And ironically, I'll say it, the chilling out a little bit behind the wheel has really accelerated where your finishes are and where how you contend for races. So that has been very cool to see. But I'm going to use this opportunity to kind of maybe shift gears a little bit here, because you've got a lot of real world experience too behind the wheel of a car. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I've been very lucky in my life. I started racing when I was 5 years old, racing quarter midgets out in Northern California. That's really where I fell in love with dirt because my home track was a dirt track. Most of the tracks in Northern California were dirt. We did also race on asphalt more down in Southern California, which is sort of funny because the better weather's down south. So why you'd have asphalt there, I don't know. But nevertheless, that's how I got started. And I was fortunate enough to grow up with some people who made it to the highest levels of motorsport, and several that are were very successful at a regional or national level. In sprint cars and midgets.
Yeah, those guys out west, whenever we traveled out there, and we didn't run against them. I ran a few CRA races out there, and
Oh,
but
cool.
the Western guys, your Pankritzes, your Sleepy Trips, um, man, there's a lot of talent out there on that West Coast with that midget scene. So, you definitely got to experience a lot of that really cool stuff out there. Do you have a favorite track you went to out there?
Um, you know, so Placerville was my home dirt track.
Okay,
Really, I don't know if you know it. I really hope they get it on iRacing. They should.
I do know it. I've been there. So, yep.
Um, it's a unique track. It's short. Of course, the other track would have to be a Silver Dollar.
Yeah.
That's an awesome place.
Yeah, I would hope iRacing gets actually both of those. I'd actually like to see him get Paris out there too. So, but
Yeah, oh yeah, Paris for sure. But
um,
but when I was growing up, there was a West Capitol Raceway, which is actually the original host of the Gold Cup, which was in West Sacramento, not far from where my home was growing up, and so that was my first foray into
wow,
seeing a dirt track.
that's actually I've never been there, never even heard of that track. So that one's kind of unusual, but that's kind of cool. So when you first, I gotta ask you, do you remember your first time you drove out on the track in a race car?
Um, when you say that, I want to say I can visualize, if not the first, but one of the first.
Well, I
And
was going to ask you. Well, what I was going to ask is, do you remember what your thoughts were as you guys pulled through the pit gate? And maybe not so much that moment you drove onto the track, but do you remember, how like get ready to go to the track? What was that? Do you remember any of that?
um, well, I don't remember the excitement leading up to it, but I actually do remember the first time that I was in a quarter midget, and I can't believe that they would allow this today. But this is what they did. You would get in a car, and especially if you were super young, like I was 5, and there would be an adult who would stand on the Nerf bar and hold on to the roll cage with their hand ready to flip the power switch. Because on the quarter midgets, there's a switch on the outside of the car for turning the
Mhm.
ignition on and off. And and they would even like grab the steering wheel a little bit to try and make sure you didn't wreck. And I think about that now. I'm like, those guys are nuts. You let a 5 year
Yeah.
old, right? And you're hanging on to this car, and the adult's not wearing a helmet. Yeah, I mean, just yeah, things that.
Never mind 5-year-olds. I can think of adults I wouldn't trust
Yeah,
hanging
true,
on the Nerf
true, true,
bar
true.
of a, even if it is a quarter midget.
So that was my
That's kind
my
of
first
cool.
experience. Yeah, yeah, it's cool.
Do you remember your first win?
Um, I don't know that I remember my first win, but I definitely remember some big ones, or at least that were
What's
meaning.
the one? What's the one that you remember the best? It was probably the most important to you, even.
Oh gosh, most important. I don't. I can't think of the most important other than there were 2 times where I won races that were a combination of not only the driving that I put into it, but the setup that my dad had put into the car and the
Yeah.
tire choices that he had made. And so that's kind of a cool father-son connection that I'll take with me forever.
Well, you talk about we talked a little bit earlier about the development, the growing pains and everything else on iRacing to where you started, where you're now. Do you feel like you had the same development in the real world? Did you experience a lot of the same things, lessons, to be learned, that kind of thing?
Only in terms of looking back. And the reason why I say that is both my older brother and sister raced quarter midgets for a while ahead of me. I did it for longer and raced beyond that, unlike them. And we had very different racing styles. And what I'll say next will probably make sense. My older brother was very academic in his approach, so he was very thoughtful he would actually ask for the car setup to have a push for qualifying. And then he wanted it to be slightly loose for the race because it made passing easier. But if you had a slight push, the car was faster when you're by yourself. All I did was drive the crap out of the car. That's all I knew how to do. I just got in the car, and every lap was, can I go faster than the last one? That's all. And I didn't have as much thought put into my racing back then. And that's one of the things that I realized later that was different between me and my older brother.
That's it's kind of cool. Just get in it and stand on it. I like that mentality personally, but
Michael Schumacher approach. Yeah.
Yep, just stand on it, hold on, and yeah, pray. Close your eyes, whatever you need to do.
Other than traffic, I would say that's where I developed as a racer in real life, was how to get through traffic. And I would say I still use traffic to my advantage now in the BRL.
Well, you talked about your brother, your sister also doing the quarter midget. So how did you guys get into racing? Did your dad drive, or did he just take you out to a track? And your obviously your older brother might have went, hey, I want to try that. I mean, how did you get into racing?
Yeah, so my dad was always a motorsports fan. He was a mechanical engineer for his career, and with West Sacramento Raceway that I was talking about, that was a place that he had started going to in his youth, and then beyond that, and so he was always a racing fan. And then there happened to be at Cal Expo, which is giant fairgrounds and exposition center in Sacramento. One year that we were there for an auto show, and there were quarter midgets, and my dad started to ask some questions, and the next thing you knew, he came home with one. And it all started from there.
Did you guys, if you guys weren't racing and going on the track doing that, I mean, did you guys grow up watching like maybe a series out there, or try to go see? I mean, you guys being Placerville always had great racing, still does to this day. Did you guys follow anything out there like that?
Oh yeah, World of Outlaws, for sure, and the Gold Cup has always been a big thing in California. And so yeah, that was part of it. I don't remember all of that because I was so young before we started racing in real life that I don't remember all the tracks that we necessarily went to. But yeah, always been a dirt fan, my family.
Well, being a dirt guy out there and liking those sprint cars, you guys ever get out to Rico's vineyards out there?
I have not been to Abreu Vineyards. Interestingly enough, my older brother, does live in the wine country. So yeah, there's a lot of good wine in California. You may have heard about that.
Sure. Well, yeah, Richard Childress, I think, owns a few out there. Rico, that have racing connections anyway. I mean, there's a ton of them outside that, but yeah, there's a few guys out there that own vineyards. A couple quarterbacks, NFL quarterbacks too, that I think going out there too. So I think Drew Bledsoe is one of them. But World of Outlaws and all that. So did you have a favorite driver then, growing up, whether it been World Outlaws or even NASCAR? I mean, who was your guy when you were like a wee little tot there?
Doug Wolfgang.
Wolfgang, nice.
In fact, I can remember one of the times that I first became a fan of his was, and you talk about heat races, I think an 8 or 10 lap heat race. Lap number 2, I'm not kidding, the engine is on fire. It's burnt. I mean, flames. He doesn't take it into the pits. I'm pretty sure he finished first or second in that heat race with the car on fire for 6 of the 8 laps. And that's who he was, sprint cars back then were a whole different ball of wax. The wings were just starting to become something, with the sideboards then weren't offset when I first was following World of Outlaws, and then they were just starting to.
You're talking way back in the early 80s.
Yeah, 70s, 80s.
Early 70s, yeah. Wow.
So it was fun to watch, and they didn't have power steering.
Nope.
You know, those guys' arms and the tracks would just get decimated with ruts. They didn't have the track prep like they do now.
Yeah, first time I ever got upside down in a race car was a wing sprint car, and yeah, I hooked a rut, and yeah, so yeah, those guys were nuts. I always like, I haven't done it yet, but I go through Knoxville all the time. I got to get up to
Awesome.
that Sprint Car Hall of Fame. But yeah, when I see those old cars and those guys, whether it be old Indy cars or anything, those guys back then were nuts. Um,
Absolutely.
but that is really, really cool. Really cool story. A great bonding experience sounds like with you and your family growing up there with racing. And Wolfgang is dude is a legend, man. That I couldn't think of a better guy to kind of root for actually. If he hadn't gotten hurt, I I every bit think Kinzer wouldn't have as many championships as he got. So just my opinion anyway.
Yeah,
Um,
agreed.
so, what other hobbies did you kind of pick up then? What other things do you like to do outside of um, just outside of the real world racing or iRacing?
Yeah, this will sound cliche, having grown up in California, but in my youth, I skied and I surfed. And one of the
Nice.
and one of the cool things about where I was living is I have surfed and skied on the same day, which is
Yes.
kind of a bucket list item. Not at the same location, but
No, no.
but
That's
within the
one of
same day.
that. I'll be honest. That's one of the things I absolutely. If it didn't cost so much to live out there, I would live out there because you've got everything right there. Beach, mountains. You got all your seasons sometimes all wrapped up in the same day. It is unlike anywhere else that I can think of. So no, I totally relate to the skiing and surfing on the same day.
Yeah.
So
So
didn't do it, but I know it could be done.
yeah, and where I went to college was UC Santa Cruz, so I
Oh,
was
nice.
right there.
Yep.
Um, and then I like hiking. I like fishing, including some fly fishing and uh, projects. I part of what I like about iRacing and home improvement projects is that it takes me away from what I do, and I like getting my hands dirty and also this is probably why I fit in New England is I'm cheap. I I I hate to pay someone to do something that I feel like I could do myself, and what I like to say about, being a DIYer is, why hire someone to do something that you can do a horrible job yourself? That's how I look at it.
It's
I'm
not a
kidding.
bad way to go. No, I mean,
Yeah, I'm
I'm the
slow and I do
opposite.
bad work.
If I was honest with you, I'll be honest with you. I'm at the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm the what? Oh, call the guy. That's me. Call the guy. And part of that is because I don't have the time. I wish I did
Yeah.
probably to learn and to do more, but I just don't have that time. Um, but one of your other hobbies, that I saw that you do are the 124 scale racing. Tell me
Yeah.
about that because there's a couple of guys I know. Ruben Altice does some scale stuff, and I think there's a couple others that I think I've interviewed. So tell me about your experience.
Yeah, so that's also something that I got into from my dad. So there are a type of model car that race on wooden tracks. The scale is 1/24th scale, so the cars are about 4 to 4.5 inches long, about 3 inches wide, and like the name slot car suggests, there is a nose piece called a guide flag that slides into a slot and the cars pick up electricity from a copper braid that is on each side of the slot, and you only control the throttle. And the cars can come out of the slot if you're going too fast, or if we bump another car. So it's a lot of fun. It gets very competitive, and just like we find in iRacing, when you're on the track, you can have some of the stiffest competition and maybe a little nerve wracking attitudes and let's say a little friction. And then when it's over, we go out to dinner and everybody, has a good time.
Oh, that sounds like real racing too.
Yeah.
Want to
Well,
knock
it is kind of real racing.
want to knock out each other out at the pay window, then you get up at the restaurant up the road and you're sitting there laughing about it. I've seen that many a time.
But just like
That
real
is so
racing.
cool. Yeah, that is really really cool. Um, how often do you get to do that?
Well, before 2020, I was doing it a lot. Going to traveling series, just like real racing.
Hmm.
And that I would race locally almost every Friday night, and then once a month would be participating in a travel series that would take us all over New England. So sounds a
Oh
bit
wow.
like 1-to-1 scale cars.
Yeah. Hey, scratching that competitive itch, though. I mean, we talked about that earlier. It sounds like you get that as an outlet. You said, last Friday you were at a big event. So tell me a little bit about what a big event looks like and the vibe and all that stuff for those things.
Sure. So within slot cars, there are certain events around the country. There's even world championships. You'd be surprised at how big it is outside the United States, especially in Eastern Europe, of all places. But
Really?
oh yeah, a
Wow.
lot of the latest technology is coming out of Slovakia, um, uh, or
You're
and
kidding.
Czech Republic. No, yeah, and it's
I
all
would
engineers.
I would never have even thought that in a million years. That is cool.
And you'd think these things are simple, but just like everything, once you get into it, it becomes very detailed. So I
Yeah.
show up at track, I probably have 8 different tire compounds.
Are you kidding me?
No,
Wow. For slot racing?
yes, sir.
Wow.
And because the tracks are wood, I am measuring temperature fluctuation and humidity.
Oh wow. Okay, so you're putting see now you talked about earlier not putting a whole lot of thought and just going fast. Sounds like you've evolved to where you're putting a lot of thought. Um how long does I mean do you have to like buy a set of tires for an event or will they last multiple events? I mean, how long do those sets of tires last?
That depends. Do you want to win, John?
I want to win. Of course I always want to win.
Right. So it's pretty much one set of tires for a race because you're gonna cut them. You're gonna true them down to as small as you can to
Hmm.
pass tech, and that's it.
Wow. That's incredible. Um Yeah, I'm at a loss. I would have never guessed that much went into it, and now all of a sudden, um, I kind of want to. I wish I could. I have to go and find YouTube videos now and watch just so I can appreciate what those guys are doing. Um, that
Yeah.
is
If you did
really really cool.
do a Google search for slot car um, G7 or Group 7 world record,
Okay, I will do that.
but that's not the
Very
type of
cool.
car that's not the type of slot car I race. What I race is a little bit slower than those. But
I'll definitely as soon as we're done, I'll be googling that for sure. Um, well, you talked about your dad and your brother, your sister. How about are you married? Have kids now? I mean, you sound like you're a little bit further along in life. So tell me a little bit about what you got going on right now, as far as family goes.
I think you just called me old, John.
Hey, I'm 50. So depends on your point of view, I mean, everybody, the funny thing is I'm at that age where everybody either looks way older than I am or they look way younger. Nobody looks my age, to me anymore. So, yeah. So,
That's
you
I
know,
gotcha. No, I'm 55.
okay.
Coming up next
Now,
month.
I wouldn't have thought you were that old to believe. I thought you were maybe right about my age. So, but I guess that is right about my age in the grand 50, 55. That's really not that big of a difference now.
Right, right. So coming up in just over a month, I'll be happily married for 28 years.
Well,
Uh,
congratulations. That's very cool.
and I'm very, again, like I said, I'm very lucky. My wife helps me be a better me is the best way that I can put it. Challenges me to be a better person. which I can use from time to time. And
we all could.
yeah, for sure, right. And I have 3 grown children. Youngest one is about to graduate from college. Oldest is married.
Oh, you cut out.
Yeah, my oldest will be married 2 years here coming up in June. No
Cool. You got
grandkids.
no grandkids yet?
No, no. My oldest and his wife are the
What
oldest.
I gotta ask you, what kind of grandpa are you? When that time comes, I'm not trying to hurry anybody along here,
Right, right.
but what is Chris the grandpa got to be like?
Oh my gosh, probably a pain in the neck to my son or whomever has the grandkids first, because I will my wife and I will probably spoil them. That's
Oh yeah.
that's what I think. But also we definitely want to be near our kids and hopefully our grandkids and hopefully everyone will stay around this area.
Well, very cool, very active, and that's really neat to hear, and everything else. So it's cool to hear your background because to hear because I can gather from you how much family means to you and all that kind of stuff. So that is so cool to hear that. What do you do for work then too?
Yeah, it very different from the typical person that you'd see at a dirt track. Um, I lead a team of wealth management experts in the financial industry, and that's what I do during the week.
See, Chris, I have a term from that. I fit into this category too. That you are cultured hillbilly. That's what it is. So
Oh,
just think
100%.
about that. Just think
Yeah.
about that. But wealth man, that is man, we've got we've got a lot of folks in here that I talk to that it's just like, okay, I've wasted my life or whatever. We had a structural engineer, I think, on last week talking about the roundabouts, and we've had scientists, everything else, and now someone in the finance world here. Um, what? Tell me a little bit about exactly what it is, though, that from your what is it that you do on a day? What's your portfolio look like?
Yeah, so I do have to be cautious.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, in speaking to the media, if I describe who my employer is, I have to have approved
Oh,
reference.
okay. Well, I
So,
don't want
but
you to do that. Give me an idea. Is it, how about this? Is it estate planning? Is it financial planning? And we'll just leave it at that. What is it that you specialize the most in then?
so here's how I can
Or
easily
investing.
Yeah, here's how I can easily answer that question
Okay.
that'll make sense. So when I
Okay.
say I lead a team of wealth management experts, here it is in a
Mhm.
nutshell. I am like someone's primary care physician in that I have a practice, just like a doctor has a practice.
Okay.
And in my practice, I'm the generalist and the patient's first point of contact and the person that they are probably meeting with on a fairly regular basis. And
Got it.
then, depending on their circumstances, just like if your wrist hurts, your doctor refers you to an orthopedic specialist.
Hmm.
Well, on my team, I have tax, trust, and estate experts, for example.
Gotcha.
We don't
Okay.
do. I don't do tax, and my team doesn't do tax prep. We don't file returns, but we do that. We do estate planning, but we're not a law firm, so we can't draft any legal documents.
Gotcha.
Uh, so yeah, really everywhere money and life intersects is what I'm there for with clients.
Well, very, very cool. Sounds like that can be rewarding at times too. So, when your clients succeed or get to that retirement, you help them along the way. So, very cool, man. Well, I tell you, we're kind of getting towards the end of everything here a little bit. I don't know if you've watched shows, but I like to do a thing at the end called the green, white, checkered, which is just basically 3 kind of rapid fire questions at you.
Right.
And then give me an answer and just give me a quick thought, okay?
Yes, please.
All right, first one, asphalt or dirt?
Dirt, asphalt's for parking lots.
All right, see, now you've redeemed yourself. You almost lost it earlier when you said you're focusing on the asphalt. Okay, you've redeemed yourself a little. All right, fishing or fly fishing?
That's a tough one. I did things backwards. So I grew up trout fishing in California,
Hmm.
moved to New England, and do more bass fishing now that I'm in New England, which makes no sense, but that's what I did.
Gotcha. All right. Since you've mentioned your nickname a few times, Mr. Aggressive, so you know what? I'm gonna ask you your last one here. That's gonna take a play on that. So, what is your favorite aggressive move that you like to see when you're watching a race? So, is it the bump and run? Is it shoving it in there three wide, a dive bomb? What is your favorite aggressive move that you like to see?
I think one of my favorites isn't a slide job, but I go out to Port Royal every
Oh,
year
yes.
for the
Speed Palace.
Tuscarora. Yeah, Tuscarora. Now,
Yep.
personally, I think the best dirt track racing is a midget on a quarter mile or smaller. However, as much as I think a slide job is awesome, what I love is when someone just completely sends it across the top and clears the guy on the bottom who's trying to maybe slide up to block his momentum, and he doesn't lift, and clears him going around the outside. At places like the Speed Palace, where they will bang the guardrail with their right rear sometimes, and not wreck. There's a reason why I don't drive a sprint car, John, and that's one of them right there because I couldn't do that. Nope.
Yeah, that's one of the cool things. We talk about the realism between iRacing and the real life. And never driven a sprint car there, but driving a sprint car there in iRacing, yeah, you've got to put that right rear up on that guardrail and do the whole Darlington stripe thing with your right rear to
And
go fast.
that dip that's in
Oh,
iRacing
100%.
is there in
Yes.
real life. I've
Yep.
seen it happen. I've seen someone hit that dip going into turn one, and over they go.
Yep, yep. So that's awesome, man. And well, Chris, I thank you for coming in here this week. So where is going to be the next time that we see you on the track here with VGN? Will be next week with BRL or?
Oh yeah, I don't see any reason why you won't see me this upcoming weekend. If it wasn't for the slot car race last weekend, I would have been there. And man, it's a drag when you miss a week because you know you got to start at the back.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's you're gonna have your work cut out for you. Whenever that happens for me, my goal is just work back into the invert, and you're racing for the following week.
That's right. I completely agree
Um,
with you.
So, but are you going to run the dirt? I know the dirt comes to Eldora in the late model on Friday, then, but it's not broadcast. Well, it is broadcast. I think Shaggy TV is going to have it, but are you going to make that one?
I don't know for a couple of reasons. Lately, I have a standing date night with my wife on Fridays.
Oh, don't break that. Don't break that.
Yeah,
Family
no,
first.
I won't break that. It just depends on what time we are home, and also as much as it's a place that is on my bucket list.
Oh, you broke up.
I was gonna say as much as I like it in real life, I
Hmm.
can't stand racing at Eldora. I think it's one of the worst tracks we race at.
Yeah, I can see that. It locks down pretty quickly there sometimes.
Well,
So
the late
hopefully they're
model
like,
though,
yeah,
the
late
late model
model.
can be
Nice.
different.
Late model will be different, and
Yep.
watch for slide jobs at Eldora because that's the one thing you can do in the late model pretty successfully. Actually, is
Yeah,
great sliders. So
I'm thinking more about the street stocks. I just couldn't stand street stock at
nah,
Eldora.
nah, I couldn't trust Dan the Street Stocks period. But all right, but
That's okay.
hey man, I appreciate you coming in and thank you so much for your time here. And I look forward to racing you many years to come here in BRL. And it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, John. Back at you. We started banging door handles, but I'm sure if we got a chance to see each other in real life, we'd enjoy each other's company over a beverage or two.
I'm absolutely sure of it. So you have a good time here next week when you hit the track, and I like I said, I look forward to racing you sometime here in the future.
Thanks, John, and thank you to Lowell, Ryan, everyone behind the scenes in the BRL. I know there's a lot of people that I'm probably not even aware of, but it really is hands down the best league that is out there, and it's what I look forward to every weekend. So thanks, guys.
Yep. That is Chris Davis, our BRL driver for this week here on VGN Weekly. We will see you next week right here on VGN. So until then, have a great week.
Coming up on the Virtual Grip Network.
Tonight, April 22nd, catch flag-to-flag coverage of Yesteryear Racing's 1966 Tour Modified Series, live from Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway at 8:30 p.m. The RLR Skidder Creek SK Modified Series will be live from Martinsville Speedway for its season finale and Champions Night presented by Culpepper's Bakery and Cafe on Thursday, April 24th at 7:55 p.m. The BRL Modifieds and Late Models from Stafford Motor Speedway will air on Saturday, April 26th at 7:40 p.m. The OBRL Yesteryear Cup Series goes live at 8 p.m. from Talladega Super Speedway on Sunday, April 27th. Maximum Velocity Racing League's ARCA Series will be live from USA International Speedway on Monday, April 28th at 9:30 p.m. And catch the next episode of VGN Weekly at 9 a.m. on Tuesday, April 29th. All times Eastern. You can see our full schedule and more at virtualgrip.net.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of VGN Weekly. Join us next time for race recaps, interviews, and much, much more. Please like and subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell so you don't miss any of our broadcasts. If you are a league owner or potential sponsor and have a broadcasting need, please visit virtualgrip.net for info on how to get in touch with us. This has been a production of the Virtual Grip Network and the Skidder Creek Motorsports Group.